Hi, I'm Adam from Inflectra, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about Enterprise Agile Program Management, specifically using SpiraPlan. In today's video, we'll first give an overview of what is Agile and Program Management. Is it an oxymoron, or can you have Program Management and Agile and not be in conflict with each other? Then we'll look at some of the specific features of SpiraPlan and how it bridges the gap between enterprise program management and the Agile Manifesto and the Agile philosophy and avoiding micromanagement. We'll look at how you can use dashboards, program planning boards, and also have an integrated quality assurance view of your programs. We'll then look at both the defect and task management aspects. And then finally, we'll look at how you can manage your people with the resource management functionality and use the integrated program reporting to understand the functionality across an entire program that you're planning. And we have then some time for the Q&A, where we have some interesting questions from some of our customers and users who have some good questions about how to use an Agile program management tool on their projects. So before we get into the live application, the first thing I wanted to do up front, though, was talk a bit about the words enterprise and agile. The reason I bring this up is that for many people they're an oxymoron, that before the Agile Manifesto, we were all into enterprise planning, enterprise tools, lots of different complex ways of managing a project. If you can remember that far back, there would be Gantt charts, there was rational unified process, RUP, use cases, UML modeling. When we were going to be planning out a new software project, it had a very enterprisey feel, where you'd spend the next 2 years with a giant plan that had been set in stone 2 years earlier, with a huge roadmap and a huge plot the size of a wall, with every single task and activity preordained. And so, the Agile Manifesto was a reaction to that, which basically said that we don't know the future, we're not clairvoyant, and typically when you have first contact with a new piece of software, a new system, people have great ideas that really need to be reflected in the plan, and so we need to build something for change rather than preventing change. Hence the moniker Embrace Change. So there's this new thing called Enterprise Program Management, or Enterprise Project Management, Enterprise Agile Management. So what does that mean? So the key really is when we talk about enterprise and agile and management, those three separate words in one conversation, what are we talking about? Well, what we're talking about is not necessarily a reversion back to the bad old days of huge project plans, preordained plans, 500 releases and phases. That's not what we're going back to. We're talking about, well, you've got agile teams, and in many cases, those agile teams work on independent projects, and they can release things separately, and the work can go on quite happily. But unfortunately, for a lot of businesses, that's not the way things are. You have lots of interdependencies, a lot of products that may have different agile teams all working on them together, and so you need a way to have those teams be able to be agile, not to necessarily have to go back to the prescribed project plans of yesteryear, but still have a way for the program managers and the people in charge of prioritizing resources and prioritizing effort to understand, well, these different teams working on different tools and different projects, they have to ultimately work together, because we're going to release something that may be the product of many different teams, or this one team is building a set of libraries and functionality that the other team is going to need to use. And so if that team is not going to be able to deliver that, or that feature is missing, it's going to gate all the other teams. And so having a bunch of separate agile teams completely working in isolation doesn't work, in the same way that the old program plan, 2-year prescribed plan, either also didn't work. And so Enterprise Agile Plan Management is a way to try and square that circle. How do we have visibility into the multiple projects? How do we track the program milestones? How do we see the progress? But how do we avoid the tendency and temptation to micromanagement? And some tools, unfortunately, seem to promote that micromanagement, because if I change this one task, this one code commit down here, it's going to pop up to some giant report up there, and as a result, I'm not going to want to update that field, because I know that the minute I hit the save button, I'm going to get a phone call from my boss's boss wanting to know why I changed the status of that thing. And so we definitely don't want to go back into that old world of data-driven data-driven planning, where everything you did moved the entire Gantt chart, and the project manager is going to start yelling at you. So that's definitely not enterprise agile project management. That's just old school waterfall project management. Okay, so that's the first thing we'll be talking about. The second thing is we're going to be showing you how our SpiraPlan tool can help you better manage your Agile projects, especially those that are larger, that have needs for traceability, that have needs for the QA side to be integrated. And that's because SpiraPlan is part of our wider suite of tools. And so a lot of Agile project management tools are really designed to help teams and tasks. They're not necessarily geared towards larger initiatives where you have to deal with quality, traceability, auditability. And so if you look at the layout here, what we did is our Spira test tool, which is our QA platform, that helps manage a testing team. And then if you want to manage a single development team, we have our ALM suite, Spira team. And so we've built on top of that SpiraPlan, of which this is the first version, and there will be future versions coming out, that will help you manage multiple projects together in an agile way that still lets you see the overall program view. And that's kind of the philosophy, which is we want the products to be agile, we want to help program managers understand dependencies, milestones, and also understand the future, knowing the future may change, not having the program manager set the future and everyone else have to march to it. And that's a really big difference. And one of the unique aspects we think of SpiraPlan is the fact that it's not just designed for the development team, it is also designed for the whole team, the testers, the developers, the managers, the infrastructure. It's not simply a development team foisted on the testing team or a testing team foisted on the developers. It's designed to work for all disciplines in the life cycle. And before we go into the actual live application, the other thing we recognize is that nowadays teams and they're using robust sets of DevOps tool chains. There's lots and lots of tools that people are using to take an idea, a user story, an agile sprint, and turn that into something that actually is delivered. They're using different IDEs, they're using various different CI tools, potentially some automation tools for both UI testing, API testing, code testing, deployment tracking tools, performance tools, source code. There's a whole ecosystem out there of tools, things like GitHub, GitLab, Mocha, Unit.js. Lots of tools are out there that have to tie back in, and it's really important that those are integrated so that you don't have the data being lost when someone commits code. It's not extra work, because if someone has to do anything extra, it's not going to get done. So it has to be a seamless approach for everyone on the team. If the developers feel like the tools are slowing them down, they're not going to use them, and no one's going to be updating anything. If the testers think it takes longer time than using something else, they're not going to bother. So integration, we believe, is key to ensure that the entire team works together and is happy working together and doesn't try and find ways around it. So that's the slides over with. Let's move into the live application. And for those who are new to our products, this is SpiraPlan, and it's our top of the tier EAP, Enterprise Application Planning tool, building on our Spira Test QA system and our Spira Team solution. And I have some questions already coming in. The questions, if you want to write them in the chat window, I do see them. I'm going to answer them at the end, so please stay to the end of the call, and I will be answering them. Any questions you want to write, you could type them in now. If you don't want to forget, I will ignore them, but don't worry, they won't be forgotten. So thanks for that share. And so, again, I'm not sure who's on this call, if it's mostly current users or people looking to move from Spira Test or to SpiraPlan, or people who've never seen our tool. So I'm going to assume a basic understanding and kind of build up. SpiraPlan is basically a tool that helps you manage at different levels. And so when you first use the system and you come into it, you're going to see in this navigation, you're going to see projects and programs. And then ultimately the whole thing is the enterprise. So if you think of the enterprise as being all my programs and then all my programs have projects, and that's what this tree view gives you. So everything in white is a program. So for example, in today's demonstration, we've got a program called the Internal Projects Program. And we've got 5 sample projects in it. One is our standard sample called Library Information System. So if you want to play around at home after today's webinar, what I would recommend is take the Library Information System, which is a fully populated project, and just copy it and create Library Information System 2. And that's what I did. And that way, you're going to have 2 sets of projects which are largely populated, and you can then compare them together in the program view. So Library Information System is a well-populated project which is useful as a starting point. So So let's first of all look at the project level, and then we'll come back to the program level. So the project level is kind of the building block of the system, which is teams are going to work together, and this will be a project page, for example, library information system. As a team, you can see all the issues that are open, the builds, you can see your task progress, you can see your burn down, you can see the number of bugs that are open, how many of them are open, how many are closed. Of those that are open, are we talking about a whole bunch of P1s that are really important, or are we talking about a bunch of low-level ones? Are we looking at any tasks that are running late? There's 3 here, which is not good. There's some tasks that started late, these 5, and a bunch of defects that are open, which features are they impacting? And so you've got a robust set of reports and information at the project level. So project manager is really happy. I can understand everything going on in my project. And as an Agile project, I want to be able to look at not just a specific project, because that's the whole thing. I'm going to look at a specific version, and I want to potentially look at a specific sprint or iteration if I'm using a Scrum or an Agile approach that does use increments. If you're using Kanban, it's a little bit different. And so I can choose a specific release, and I can see the release, and I can see all the sprints in that release. I can see if they're on track, if they're behind. My burn down chart's now going to show me for each of my sprints how much functionality we're building in each iteration. Are we getting everything done in time? And in the same way at the project level, the person who started running the project, they're going to look at their planning board, and they're going to want to understand, first of all, what is my backlog? So this is my backlog. I've got some features in the administration section we've got to do. I've got some in the book management. So here's some things in my backlog. And each of the requirements in your backlog, you can see all the stories. You can see the tasks that belong to them. So if there are tasks, you'll see that those are right here. In this case, they're all starting late. That's why they're yellow. And if you also want to include the test cases, you can even see how we've written any test cases to go with these. So even though we're in the backlog yet, we may have written some acceptance tests before we even plan them out, which is a good thing to do. And then maybe some other ones that aren't categorized. There's a few more here. So that's my backlog of all my user stories. And then when it's time to start planning, let me look at my release. I can say, let's look at all my releases. And I want to view that by release. So I can see quickly everything that's in version 1, everything that's in version 1.1. That's great. So these are my stories. So you can see that this particular one has got 4 tasks that are all done, but this test case has failed. So you can see what's blocking it. That particular user story is looking pretty good, apart from an acceptance test that's failed. And if I look at this one here, for example here, this is a new story, and we've got 3 tasks not yet done. So there's some work to go here. So from the project management perspective, the planning board gives you that view at the project level, where you can see by release, you can see for the entire project, or you can see for a particular sprint. And you can see for sprint in a Kanban view like this, where we see each of the items, what's planned, what's in progress, what's developed, what's tested. So you can see the flow of activities through that sprint or through that release, depending on which methodology you're using. And you can also go back to the list of items in the backlog and say, well, you know what, this particular story, let's put this into release 1.1. Let's drag that in. So you can use the drag and drop to really easily move things between the different states and between the backlog at the top and the release or the sprint at the bottom. So it's easy to plan things. So from a project management standpoint, if you're used to Agile, this is very much the classic Agile view. Some of the nice things we do provide are the ability to tie in the test cases. As I mentioned earlier on, testing and QA is a critical part of the system. It's not an afterthought, it's not a plugin. So when you look at a particular user story, if we control click on one, we give the task and the development equal billing with the testing. This is a user story. This will be the description. If we had a longer one, we could write that in here. And then from the testing standpoint, you can go into your test coverage. You can see all of the test cases, the automated tests, the unit tests, anything that you have that ties back from a QA standpoint. And you can see all the development activities going on. So these are the 4 tasks that need to be done. In this case, they're actually already done. You can look at the effort it's taken, how long it's supposed to have taken. And you can look at which sprint it was delivered in. And if it's not done, you'll see the progress bar right here. So if we choose a different one, let's see if I can find one that's got something not done yet. Let's have a look. I'm not doing so well. I may have to go back to my dashboard to find one. Or I can just create a new one if not. All right, I'm just going to create a new task since there's none there. So we'll imagine we're going to create a new task. We'll add it. And that's going to appear under it. It will be, for example, create new book report, maybe, or it's deleting. So create delete confirmation message. That's a new task. And we'll set the release. Started. Hit save. And there you go. And you see that one now is marked as yellow. And if we control click on the task, we can even go here and start it. Start task. And estimated effort is 6, actual effort is unset. And let's say we've got 3 hours remaining. Hit save. And that's going to change to 50% done, and it's going to be red because it's actually supposed to be done in 2004. So there's some old sample data in the system, and that's okay. If this was in the future, it would go green, but it would still show you that progress bar, 50% green or 50% red, and then gray means not run. So you can see visually how far along you are, how much is left to go. And if we go back here and hit refresh, you'll see that same thing appears right here. And if we go back onto the planning board even and do refresh here, you'll see the same thing appear here as well. So that's the great thing, is every change you make at the project level, it's all in real time. It's a way to manage the project. So that's the project view. Now, we're talking about program management, not just project management. So if you think about it, at the project level, you've got your releases, you've got your sprints, you've got your milestones all set up. It's a great view for the project manager. But now, what about a program view? So that's where we go back to our navigation. And at the program level, what do we give you? So taking all those features at the Agile level, where we have our projects, our sprints, our releases, we take that up one level at the program level. And so if we look at our internal projects program, first of all, we do have a program dashboard. So in the same way that we had a dashboard for the individual project manager and the QA manager, we have one for the program manager. And it lets you see across the entire program. So you can see all of your program risks, or risks from any of the projects in the program. You can see the list of projects, obviously, that's useful too. But you can also see the metrics gathered across the entire program. So you can see the requirements coverage. There's a graph right here where you can see the program requirements coverage, how many requirements and user stories do we have on all the products in the program, and what's our coverage. And in this case, this blue bar would show you that you've got well over half of them don't have any test coverage. So the question is that all in one project, or is that distributed amongst many projects? Well, when you look further down, the great thing is we do show you here what is that distribution. Well, first of all, one project has no test coverage, so everything in there is uncovered, and that's probably giving you a large proportion of this. And then the other two products that are substantial in size, they're about 50% not covered. So the responsibility or the blame is pretty much equally shared. You can then click on one of these projects, dive into it, and then take action. But the nice thing is I don't have to go through 4 or 5 different project pages just to see a program view. I have a nice consolidated program view like this, where I can see all the information, which is great. So then the second thing is I might want to look at my test information, and the same thing, I can see my test information by project. And so for my tests have all passed or all failed, I can see that for each project. And there's a whole bunch marked as gray, not run. So I can see that all products right now have a serious issue where a lot of tests haven't been run yet. But on the other hand, if you look, you can see this one here, there's a lot more passes. This one here, it's got the same number of tests, but almost nothing is run. So I might want to drill down into that one a bit further. And so by doing so, I can then go into this particular project and see we have a whole bunch of things not run, and then I would then be able to take action on that. And again, keep logging the questions. I will get some at the end, so don't worry. And basically, this is the testing view then of that one project. So I've known from the program view, I can then drill down in the system from a program to a project, into a release, and then into the individual test cases and take action. And then when you run the test cases, as if you use the system, you'll know you can log defects. So imagine that we've assigned these to our testers. We know we need to take action, and they're going to log some defects, and they're going to do some testing. So just to pretend we're doing that, we're going to simulate that now by running some tests. So we'll go execute tests. In real life, I will obviously, as the program manager, I'm not running tests. I'm assigning it to someone else, but we'll just pretend to save some time that that's what I did, and I'm now logging in as the tester to run the tests. So I can go in here, and I'm going to run my tests, and let's say I'm going to, pass the first couple of steps. I'm going to fail it with an issue, found a bug on viewing books. It's meant to be a library, and we'll fail that, and we'll log a defect. So we'll hit the defect tab, we'll enter in a defect, bug on screen, we'll choose the type, we'll choose the priority, any of the other fields that are set up, and we'll hit fail. So we've now failed the step, and the next one we'll pretend that passed, and the next one we'll pass that. This one, we'll say this passed with a warning. So let's go ahead and pass the first step, and pass the second step with a warning. Passed, but there is a typo on the screen, say. So we're just doing some good testing. Log the results. Great. So we've done that, and now if we go back to our hit finish. If we now go back to our test page, you'll see that the tests have been updated. And if we go back to our program view, you'll see that that's also changed as well. We'll see more test results logged right here. So whereas before, if you remember, it was mostly gray, now we've got some reds and greens and oranges. It's starting to look a bit more populated, so everything's in real time in the system. And obviously we did log a defect, so some of the other things we do provide at the program level is not only this dashboard, but we also let you see some of the information rolled up. So the first thing we offer you is a program level planning board. And the program level planning board is very similar to what I showed you earlier on in the project level, but it's now available across all the projects. So the first thing is you might want to look at the program level backlog, but you can look at it by priority. That's going to show you all of the user stories and requirements across any project in this program. So this is our combined backlog. So as before, I was looking at that library information system. I'm now looking at 5 different projects and their backlog. And if I click on one of these items, it will drop me into that project. So I don't have to worry about where I'm clicking. It's going to always get me into the right project, and I can see the information. So it gives me a top-down view. And if I do any movement, if I move things between priorities here, I can drag and drop them, and I can groom the backlog at the program level. So I might have a view that this particular feature here is less important than this feature here. Maybe I'll move it, or maybe I'll move it to a lower priority and move this one up. And I can do that at the program level. Now it's affecting it in each project, but it lets me see that in reality these two are actually in different projects, or they could be in different projects, and I can now prioritize them and weight them relative to each other. Whereas without this, I would have to go into each project and try and make a value judgment as to, well, I remember seeing it, is this more important than that? Well, the good thing is I can see in a consolidated view everything we intend to do for these systems, and I can weight them and rack them and stack them across the entire program. As well as by priority, I can look at it by status as well, so I can see what's the flow. So, for example, I can see that we've rejected this. That's good. That's under review. There's a whole bunch of things here people have asked for we haven't looked at yet, and I might look at these and go, well, this is really important. Let's put that into under review. This needs to be under review, and I don't have to worry about, am I in project 1, am I in project 2? I can look at what's important, and I can make sure that we're looking at them consistently and coherently across the two. And if you actually look, these are the same, because one is in project 1 and one is in project 2. They are identical, and they're both really important. And they're in 2 different projects, there are 2 different teams working on them, but they both have to get done because we know that's important for the program. So that's the other nice feature, is you can find commonalities, whereas if you were looking at the project level in isolation, you just don't see this. And so it's a nice way to be able to see what is the flow of activities across my program, and as well as at each individual project. So that's the first thing, is you can look at the backlog at the program level, and you can always include tasks and test cases just as we did do before. Now, the second thing we can do is we can also then look at all projects, because I want to see how we're organizing things at the project level. And let me take off some of these other things, make it a bit smaller. It's okay, it's a bit more compact. I can see right here what's prioritized in each release in each project. So I can see it across the entire program, what's critical, what's high, or if I want to look at it by project, look right here. Here's each project, and you can see now very clearly that project 1 and 2 are obviously cloned from each other because there's a lot of the same things in both. But you can see what's going on in each of the projects separately, so it gives you a by project breakdown. And that's really handy if you've got a whole bunch of high priority things in one project and maybe a bunch of lower things in the other. You might understand that we need to resource them differently. And by that, you can then go by person to see if you've got members of the team and these people might be on multiple projects, what are they working on? And so you can see your workload across the program. So that's the other nice thing, is whereas the project dashboard and the project planning board will let you see, Fred is working on this project, he's got some stuff assigned to him, I don't know what else Fred's working on. Well, this will let you see everything across all the products in the program. So if Fred is multitasked across too many different projects, it's going to become very apparent, because in reality, probably none of Joe and Fred probably shouldn't have as many as these things all open at once. That doesn't make so much sense. And then also you can look at it by status. So we looked at it by status before at the backlog. Now we're looking at it in the plans, in the sprint and release plans. You can see here what's planned, what's in progress, and what's developed. And this is again across the program, not the project. So you will see a lot more obviously in each of the stages that you'd expect. And lastly, you can also still drill down to a project. Now this is in many ways the same as what you would have seen at the project level on the project planning board, but lets you do it from within this view, so you haven't got to keep switching between the views. So you can see at the project level what's going on by priority, by status as well. So you can view it for the backlog at the program level, you can view what's in the plan for the entire program, and then you can drill down to an individual project. So that way it does give you the option to drill down, and you can also get there if you were at the program level and you click on one of the project links, like this one here. It's going to do the same thing. It just drills you down one level further. So you have the program level and the project level all in one view under this planning link under the program. So that's the first thing. The second thing we'd let you do at the program level is let you see the integrated release schedule. So if you remember before, when I looked at that project, I had my project and my release 1, release 1.1, release 2. That's great, but I can also now see across all 5 projects now what is the releases and the milestones. So I can look at in system 1, actually show me do that, there we go. You can now look at the different levels, that's under these here. So I've got 5 projects and they all have different releases, and I can make the list a bit bigger. And you'll see we have this demo project's got a release, this library system's got a release, under this release we've got a sprint. There we go. 3 sprints here and sub-releases. So you can see all the milestones and you can see all the progress for all the different releases top down. So this is really useful when you have 3 or 4 different projects, and you can notice that in this first project, we're halfway through test coverage, the tasks are on track, we're looking good. The clone that I made, we've done almost nothing. Everything's not started, there aren't tasks for a lot of things. So you can see right away which of the projects are on track, which releases are on track, and then you'll see which sprints are done, which sprints are not done. But it lets you see it at a program view. So again, versus having to go through 3 or 4 different projects and trying to find everything, you've got this top-down release view. And in the next year, we are going to be releasing a lot more functionality around programs and projects, so this is definitely not the be-all and end-all, but what we have given you as a sort of starting point in this first version of SpiraPlan is the ability to take all your products that you already had, have a top-down planning board view, have a top-down release view, and be able to slice and dice the data in different ways. Now, the last thing is I did log a defect, if you remember, earlier on during testing, and the defects obviously live in a project. You've got a bug, it was in this system, but oftentimes as a program manager you want to see all the defects because there may be commonalities, so we have added also a program level defect page, and that's useful if you've got a whole bunch of defects and a whole bunch of projects that are all related and you want to find them. Maybe you want to find all the defects to do with the database because there's some database that's shared between the different projects and you want to know everything that's to do with databases. Well, you can find it. And these are both actually in the same project, but they wouldn't have to be. Or I was doing, when I created my bug on books, there's a lot there. That's probably not a good one. Let's say not found. Maybe that's better. There we go. That's better. So now you'll see we've actually got some defects in this project 1, and in our second copy of the project, we've got that new defect I just logged. And you can see that that's now available here. So the good thing is you can see and search across everything in the program to see what defects are open, what status they're in, what priority they are, and furthermore, if you want to find anything that's in a certain progress, like what's not started, what's completed, you can see across the entire program what's not started. These 2, let me get rid of that, and then a whole bunch more. So you can actually filter across the entire program, which is very nice as well. And if you want to find what's Fred working on, he's got these 2 defects, that's great. He's got a whole bunch more too. So you can see what Fred's up to across the entire program. So these 3 views, planning, releases, and incidents, give you a program-wide view of the planning, the releases, and the incidents. And you will, in future versions, be seeing a lot more functionality again here. So that's some of what we've added at the program level. The other thing we have added also within SpiraPlan is also the ability to do additional views even at the project level. So for example, if we drill down, one of the things we've added is if you've used the system before, we've always had the ability to slice and dice defects and tasks. We've now added unique table and board views, so that if you want to look at a task board or you want to look at an incident board, you now have a way to do that directly in the system. Before, it was something you had to, it was buried within the planning board. We've now pulled it out as its own set of functionality. So again, back into the idea that Agile should work at different levels. There are task boards, there are defect boards for the maintenance side of things, for tracking the tasks, and it rolls all the way up to the program level when you're having a top-down view. And so, that is our essentially the design of SpiraTeam and SpiraPlan, which builds on it, is letting teams work independently, but letting the program manager have the visibility, have the ability to generate the documentation and the reports, so that if the program manager wants to find out what tasks are dependent on each other, which requirements have no test cases, what traceability are they deficient in, you can generate documents, you can generate reports, and you can find that information either from your project or now across the entire program. But it isn't necessarily a tool to try and micromanage every single developer. Every single item that the developer acts on is going to be visible at the top-down program level. We want to try and make sure that the program manager has the right information to make decisions, but isn't necessarily concerned with every single artifact or every single change made in every single project, because that will defeat the whole philosophy behind Agile. So that was the planned presentation, and that should leave us with about 10 or so minutes for questions. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Q&A. So I can see that some people have been writing them in the chat window, so I'm going to read those out and answer them. If you want to also ask the question over the audio, feel free to just unmute your line and ask the question. So let me go first of all with the ones that have already been entered. But again, if you want to ask a question, feel free. So the first question that came in was from Cher, which was, are there any plans to add a Karma Jasmine unit testing integration? Great question. We've added integration already with Mocha and Unit.js, which is one of the Node.js unit test frameworks. We haven't yet added Jasmine. It honestly depends on feedback from customers. So I would say the best thing for that one would be if you could email us, and we'll log it into our backlog. I think we may already have Jasmine in our backlog. I don't know about Karma, but it's always good to have a customer, send it in, because it does add one more vote to the functionality. That's definitely true. The second question, and again, if you want to ask a follow-up question, just unmute your line or just write it in. The second question was, let's have a look. Do you have plans to integrate with IM tools like Slack and HipChat? That's a great question. So first of all, for those who are not familiar, we do have an IM tool that actually built into SpiraPlan and SpiraTeam, but not in SpiraTest. So if you want to send instant messages, you will maybe have noticed, and I didn't mention it, all the users in the system have these little circles, so you can actually bring that up and send a message. Hey Fred, what's up? And that sends a message to Fred, and when Fred replies, you'll see it in real time. So there already is a real-time instant messenger, and you can tag messages with artifacts. So if I want to take that comment, I can post that as a permanent comment on the artifact. Now, I wouldn't want to do that with a "Hey Fred, what's up?" The idea is that Fred and I might have a conversation in real time, and maybe some of that might be pertinent to the requirement. So I can just tag it, and it will appear right here. Question. Hi.
Yeah.
Hello.
I did that question. I had a question also for that. So my question was related with what if we need to track in some IM like Slack or whatever, like the transition between one story from one place to another. Let's say from to do to develop.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do that?
So when you say so first of all, there's an instant messenger built in, which actually I want to mention that before we talk about the integration, because I was going to talk about that next. When you say you're going to make a transition from one state to the other, you want to tell someone, or you want to document why you're doing it? What's the exact case?
For instance, let's say that you have a specific user story
Mm-hmm.
in to do.
Yep.
One developer pick that and move into develop.
Yep.
So I want that the IAM takes care of that and post some message saying, okay, the task is now in develop or whatever.
Oh, okay. So it's not that you want the developer to be able to message someone and say, "Hey, I'm doing something." It's an automated notification is what you're talking about. Ah, okay, that's different. Okay, so what we have right now is first of all we have notifications in Spira, which you people may have used, which sends an email and it appears on the dashboard. And we do have some limited integration with Slack already, where you can it gets pushed as an RSS feed and Slack can pick it up. Which is limited, I'll be honest, but you can do that. You can actually have, because Slack can read RSS, so we can push things to RSS. We're going to be adding in version 6 in November webhooks. And one of the principal reasons we're adding webhooks is specifically because people want to be able to push to Slack changes. So we are going to be adding webhooks in 6.0, and it's for a variety of things. You'll be able to call any webhook, not just Slack. But one of the key use cases that we've designed that functionality for is to be able to push very customized notifications to Slack. Because right now you can do email and you can do RSS, which Slack can read, but it's not Slack specific. And so the plan with the webhooks is to handle exactly that case.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that welcome is the correct answer, actually. Thank you.
You're welcome. And in terms of the solution, once we implement webhooks, we most likely will pre-build in it some events and some plugins for Slack. Probably not HipChat at this point because it looks like Atlassian's getting rid of HipChat. So at this point, we'll have the general webhooks functionality, which anyone can use for any tool, and we'll probably pre-build a plugin for Slack just because it is the number one tool. So that's that question. Okay, I'll come back to that one. How do you measure coverage on the requirements? How do you measure coverage on the requirements? Great question. That's from Share. So coverage on test coverage specifically, because we do also have tasks, but in this case it's really test cases. So the way that works is if you go to a requirement, let me go right here. And oh, sorry, was it Sebastian?
Yes, Sebastian, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I see. It says the from the person, and then it says the name. Sorry, I got the yours is the next one. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's okay. It has the that's funny. WebEx has the person before it, and I was reading it off first. Okay, so sorry, it's Sebastian. I'll come back to chair. You're one next. So basically, the test requirements test coverage. How does that work? That works by if you've got one requirement. So this is one requirement here, and we have test coverage tab. You'll see there are 4 test cases linked to that requirement, and so one is failed, one is passed, and one is not, and 2 are not run. And so we would say this requirement is essentially a half not run, a quarter failed, and a quarter passed, and that makes up the 100% coverage. So we don't weight them anyway, unlike tasks where we do apply an effort-based weighting. For the test cases, at least right now, we're giving them one test case, one vote. So even though the test cases are different priorities, we're not necessarily saying, well, this one's a critical, it should be higher. I mean, maybe we should do that, but right now we keep it simple. It's a quarter failed, a quarter passed, and a half not run. So then when you go to the requirements list page or the planning board page, actually let me go to planning board, and you see the icon, it's going to show you. Oh, actually, let me do this page. It's probably easier. Where is it? It's that one here. You'll see it's that bar shows a quarter green, a quarter red, and a half grey. What we do then is imagine we add those up across all of the requirements in the project, and the ones that are not covered just get one vote of not covered. So we add all the quarters up, all the halves up, and the equivalent fractions, and then we add on one for anything that's not covered. We put that into a graph, and then you get this chart here, and that's your test coverage. So there are 22 that have not covered. That's easy because it's either covered or not covered. For the other status, it's the sum of the fractional contributions of all the requirements in the project. If that answers the question. Okay, you're welcome. And we do roll it up to the parent. So you can, if you don't want to see the whole project, but you want to look at just this level, you can see it at incremental stages in the hierarchy as well. Okay. So the next question was the central code repository and builds at the program level. That's a great question. As of right now, SpiraPlan or team only allows code repositories at the project level. So you create a repository. If you're using our on-premise solution, you can use any source code tool you like. If you're using our cloud solution, we have a cloud Git and cloud subversion option, and it's one repo per project. Now, you could, in theory, link the same repo in for on-premise customers, you can actually link the same repo to multiple projects. I don't know why you want to do that. You could. For the cloud solution, though, it is a unique one-to-one for repo to project. Right now, at the program level, we don't have any concept of a source code repo. So what you want, I mean, it sounds like what's missing is not so much the code repository, though I can see the need for that. It depends what is a program a collection of separate projects, or is a program a series is it an integrated single platform essentially, which has got different flavors. So I could see that you could want a program level repo, or maybe having a project repo that all the products could share. Maybe the sort of easier solution. But we can't do that either. But the other thing would be the build. So it sounds like what you want is that you could have one job in Jenkins, and that job obviously has to tie to a Spira project. The ability to have it post the same build result to multiple projects at the same time. So like if you use our plugin, you put in if you've used it, you put a project ID, you put the project I think ID in, and you put the version number, and that's or the sprint number, and that's where it posts. It sounds like what you want is to be able to have a multi-select or some multiple selection option where the single job that you run could post the exact same results against multiple projects at once. Is that right? Or I guess so. The better option would be to have a build artifact at the program level. Hmm. Right. So what we're looking at adding, and we don't have it right now. So some of this is again still preliminary. Would be we're going to have what's essentially above right now. Releases are in. So project one has release one, project two has release one, maybe release two, release whatever. But they're connected. They're really one platform release. We're going to be adding in the program level a concept of like a milestone, a program milestone. Like think of it as like a super release, a release that's at the program level, or and that's going to so you can create a program milestone under program A, and that milestone might be release one of this product and release two of that product and release three of that product. They're all one platform release. And so that's one thing we are going to be adding. But I think that what you're asking for is to go one step further and is to take that program milestone and say the build actually is actually being reported against that milestone. And obviously it's implicit that all the releases tied to that milestone would essentially be picking up that build. Okay, so we are planning on doing the milestone piece. The build piece is something we haven't thought about, but it makes some sense. So I'll take the action item to document that for the future. But yeah, we hadn't thought about that piece in the near term, I must admit. You're welcome. Program builds. Okay. Let's keep going down the list. So we've got that. Can we see tasks per person across the program, similar to what you showed for requirements? Not yet. No. The program views are currently basically requirements with which will show you tasks and test cases for the requirement, and you can see incidents and you can see releases. There's not a task-wide view yet. Right. Now we are adding a resource. Yes, and actually, you hit the kind of the thing on the head for the expression. You hit the nail on the head because actually what we're talking about is an enterprise view, which is one of the things we are adding. So we are adding an enterprise view, which will be above. Right, this is the program. The orange is the project level, the white is the program level. That's what we're talking about today. The above this, we don't really have it right now, is the enterprise level. Obviously, there's a sysadmin level, but that's completely different. We're going to be adding an enterprise view, which will be system wide. Now, some customers may never want that because they don't want people having access across everything. But for people who are managing teams that are consistent across all programs and all projects, we're going to be adding that enterprise view. And the primary driver is almost for HR. It's for the resource manager person who wants to know who's rolling off which project and when that project is ending, and when can they be available. So we are adding that, but that's probably about 6 to 9 months away. Right, and that was the driver for having the incident view across the program, obviously. But yeah, the task. It's funny. We thought about requirements being obvious because people need to know. People work on these stories. I think because a lot of times the tasks are tied to the story, we felt that was the principal way people would want to do that. But I could see that also at a task level, you might want to be able to load balance and see, which task is more important if this person only can do one of them. So we don't have that. Good question. Moving along. When you create test cases and then move them into a test set, are any changes made to the initial test cases carried forward to the test set? So when you add a test case to a test set, it's just a link. So this is a little bit off topic from enterprise planning, but it's no problem. If you go into the system and you look at any test set, let's say we look at where we go. This one here, scheduled testing cycle for release 1. You see these test cases in the set. They're links to this test case. There's no intrinsic metadata that's unique to this test sets. So if I edit this test case, I create a new author and I hit save, it's going to affect this test set. It's going to affect any test set that has the test case. It's just a link. So does that make sense? So I think that was Marcellus. You're welcome. Now, the one thing that is interesting is you can set parameter values, and those parameters are the values of the parameters is specific to the set it's in. That's probably the only thing that is set at the test set level. So if I set the parameter, the browser name IE here, and I have this same test case in another set, or even in this set, it's not going to use that browser name. That's only for this set. But everything else, all the other fields you see here, they're read-only. They're only for the purposes of illustrating what that test case has. They're not unique to that test set instance. Okay. Or either way, it doesn't matter. When you add it to the test set, or it's going to have it when you remove the test case from the set, it still has it. The test case has the steps, has all the data is on the case. The set is just a collection of test cases. It doesn't contain any unique aspect of that test case apart from the parameter values if you set them, like this browser name here. That's correct. So yes, when you're running, a test run that's in progress is isolated from the rest of the system, and so that what people are doing in real time does not affect runs in progress. That is correct. You'd have to terminate the run and restart it and continue where you left off. Yes, if you run if you run a test case in a set or not in a set, as long as the test case is linked to the requirement, because that's what the link is maintained, the result's going to post to the requirement. So this test coverage here will change. The only thing I will say is that if you run it outside of a test set, then if a test case is in a test set, but you run it from outside the test set, the test set won't get updated with the status. The requirement will be updated with the status, but the test set won't. But if you do forget to do that, there is an option to link it after the fact, which I think we added a while back. So if you run a test, so if you go into a test run, you can look at the test run page and see what's linked to a test set or not. And if you see anything like this one's blank, we didn't run this as part of a test set, even though this is in many different test sets. So if you go in here, you could decide, oh rats, I forgot to choose the test set. There's an option now to link it. So that was a new thing, because a while back we didn't allow that, and then people would I forgot to link it, and I can't get my metrics updated, and don't want to run it again. What do I do? And so we did add that feature. But ideally, you should run it from the test set. It's more if you forget or somehow it was run outside of. They have to run either as the whole set, or you can run if you want to run some of them. So sometimes people don't want to run the whole set. Like I'm on this set, I don't want to run everything. You can pick and choose. If you pick and choose from here and hit execute, that will run them as within the set context, and they will update here. But if on the other hand you click through to it, and this is where it's a bit tricky, and you hit execute from here, you're going to run this one test case. But because you're on the test case page now, it doesn't know which test set you came from. Or even if it does know which test set it came from, it doesn't assume that you want to necessarily make it part of that. So don't click this execute button. Make sure you use, if you're going to run a partial set, run it this one here. That will then keep the link to the test set. If you forget, you can link after the fact using that change button, but obviously that's not ideal. Okay, we keep going. How do you initiate a QA manager view for a specific program, and can items displayed in that view be customized for a program? So in the program level, and I'll be honest, the QA side for the program is not as strong yet as some of the other stuff. So if you look at the project level, obviously you have the project dashboard, looks like this, where you can see lots of different things. We have a testing view for the project level, so that's pretty good. We can see progress and you can see results. For the program view, if you go there, we do have some graphs. So at the program view, you will see the requirements test coverage, and you'll see the test status. You'll see it for the whole program, and you'll see it for the individual projects. So you can hover the mouse over and say, okay, what percentage of that particular project has passed, what percentage of that has failed. It's very, very top down. So you do have a top down QA view like this. There's not much more detail yet. Now, obviously, it would be nice to be able to say, well, if I click on this pass graph, what are all the test cases in all the projects that are passed, and all the ones that have failed? We don't have that yet. So a test cases view kind of up here at the program level, we don't have that yet. So when you see some reds and yellows like this one, right now you would click on the project because the program has highlighted the issue, and then you would drill down and go, oh, I see the reds, and go from there. So it's program to project to test case. It's not direct program to test case right now. But it is something we are, trying to increase the program. I mean, the priority at the program level at this point is more of the milestones, the planning, but the testing side is important too. I'm going to make sure we've got that recorded. I lost my chat window. Okay. Can you filter using several criteria at the same time, i.e. filter by reporter containing some specific words, some date? So, Sebastian, if you're on the phone, filter what? Anything? Requirements, test cases, just generally?
Yeah, in general. Search if, I don't know, if I forgot, if I create a new search, something like this, to know that.
Okay.
It's a way to filter that.
Okay, so in general, there's kind of the free text search first of all, and then there's the artifact search. So the free text search is very general, and it searches either name, description, or an artifact ID. So if you know, hey, I want to get requirement 5, I think that's how I do it. Yeah, there you go, requirement 5. So that's a quick shortcut. Obviously, that most people don't know those IDs. Let's say I want to look at database. Hit database. It's going to take a little bit longer. And it's going to find everything to do with database, and you go, oh my god, everything to do with database, and then you'll say, well, this is everything I have access to. So this is every project and every program that I have access to as a person, and I don't. That's a lot. So I might say, well, actually, I'm not concerned about test cases out or tasks. I just want requirements. So I can narrow it down, and of course I've copied that project, so most of it's duplicated. So everything's twice. So I don't want the copy. I want just the current project, which is library 2, say. So you can narrow the global search. That's what global search will do. ID search and then a keyword search. Now, obviously, that's limited. So within a project, though not within a program right now, you do have the option to do more detailed structured searching where you could go in and say, let's go to tasks. Let me find all the tasks that have the word, book in them, maybe, because it's about book management. That's a lot. And then the question was, so that's the free text part, and then if I want to also structure that with maybe a priority search or a person it's assigned to search, so I could do Fred, maybe Fred and or someone else, or maybe a date range search. That was the other question. So let me go in here. I'm going to close that window and let me show end date, and I could say show me anything that's between last week, last month, last 7 days, or if I want a custom date range. This stuff is a little bit older, so let's do looking at what's on the screen. Let's say I want only things in October. Of the date ranges of that particular system. There you go. So you can use a mixture of date ranges, number ranges, releases, owners, which is the assignee. And if a field is not visible, you can just add it to filter. So there is one thing where you do have to have the field visible to filter on. Like I want to find everything updated recently. What's the last thing we touched? That's useful. I can go here and say last 7 days. And let's go ahead and do that. And in fact, let me take off this other one. So let me go ahead and blank that out. Still nothing. Get rid of the word book. There you go. So you can see there's some folders that match, nothing else. So basically, you can use a combination of filters, both for ranges, for pick lists, and free text all at once. And the other thing you can do is let me get rid of this one. This is not particularly helpful. No, still nothing. Okay, let me blank this one out. The other thing you can do is if you've got a filter that you like, I don't like this one, priority 1, say, you can also save that filter and say, you know what, that's a really useful filter. Let me share it for the team so I can save it and I can make it be, what is it? Critical, Fred, critical tasks owned by Fred. So I think that's what I've got filtered by. And I can share that with the team, hit save. And then when I refresh the page, I'll see I now have this shared filter that anyone in the team can access. If it was just for me, it would be very similar, but the icon would just have a little person, not a multiple person icon, and other people wouldn't see that filter. So you can share, you can either create favorites or create and share favorites. So that's one of the benefits of this table view. So that was that question. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, yeah. I think that you can filter that using a combination of it. So that's the code. So that's it.
Okay, no problem. Oh my goodness. Okay, next one. From a top-down program level, we need to see how many hours. Okay, this is a bigger question. The resource view, yeah, we don't have it at the program level. Other than that very simple one, we are planning on doing that. So that's not. And that's why I say I do agree. That's not micromanagement. Micromanagement is knowing what every single task every single person's on. Our view of resource planning is more about the project ending in a week. Where can I put them next? Or products behind schedule, which is useful from a program view. Another product is be ahead of time. Can I pull someone off because they're not critical to help load balance the project? Those are kinds of the questions we want to answer, not so much the why is this one person 1 hour late on one task. That's the kind of question we don't want them to answer too much, at least not at the program level. The project manager, the sprint, the scrum master of that sprint might want to know about that, but that's not the same thing. In the test case folder view, next question, let's say there are 2 folders of test cases in the one project, and these are old or no longer run. Okay, so 2 folders. Okay, how do you archive them? How do you keep showing them not run? Okay, good question. The answer to that is that if you have some test cases that you don't want anymore, and I'm just going to do it with one single test case just to illustrate it. Let's say this test case is no longer relevant for this release. Well, the easy thing to do is you go into it and say, Tools, Remove from Release. And when you do that, when you choose that release, say it's release 1, and it may not even be in that, it's not there. Great. So that will keep it away. That's great. Now the second case is, okay, not only do I not want this in this new release, I want it to be not anything in the future at all. Okay. So we do have a status called retire test case, and when you hit that, hit save, it becomes obsolete. And so we would recommend that you move it to obsolete. And if I go and then if I get rid of this, the status of that test case, which one was it? I think it was in regression, goes to NA. So it automatically goes to NA. When it goes to NA, it will no longer appear in the graphs and charts and things. So it disappears. So make it obsolete, and it becomes automatic NA. And that way, it's not run. It's NA. And that's a big difference, because unlike whereas not run is in this graph, which is appropriate, NA is not. So that way, it's no longer part of your active count in the analysis view. Okay, we've got a minute. We're a little over time, so I think, well, this is probably the last question. Unfortunately, is some plan to integrate Bitbucket? We already integrate. We have a tool maybe using called Taravault. Taravault is our installation of Git. It's basically a cloud Git that we host and provide with SpiraTeam, and it's full feature of Git. We also do offer Subversion for the customers that are using that as well. And that lets you then create, track and manage branches, and you can see all the commits. That's for SpiraPlan and SpiraTeam, but obviously not SpiraTest. If you go in the source code view, this one isn't set up for that. I'm in the wrong project. Okay, let me go into this one. This one is set up. And so you can basically see the source code inside the project, and you can link the commits, and you can link the artifacts like a requirement to a specific commit. Now we don't currently I was checking this, tie a branch to an artifact. So I can't say this user story is tied to this feature branch. What we do is we tie the commits in the branch to the requirement. But we've been doing some research, and we're going to most likely be adding the ability to tie an artifact, a SpiraTeam artifact or plan artifact, to the branch for 2 reasons. One would be that when you have a new release or a new sprint, you'll be able to say this sprint is basically for this particular branch, or this sprint's working in this branch. The second thing is, if you've got a very small feature really for a feature branch, you'll be able to tie a user story or a defect or a task to a feature branch, really a user story really. So the requirements will be typically linked to a feature branch, and then the releases and sprints will be linked to a like a tag branch, a release slash blah branch, a stable branch. So that's the idea. You'll be able to link releases and iterations to stable branches, and then typically user stories requirements, but it could be defects or tasks if you wanted to feature branches, and that's the plan. Thanks for watching today's video. If you'd like to learn more about Agile planning, Scrum, Kanban, or any aspect of the software development and testing lifecycle, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great day.